to Paper Pages and Possibilities. I'm glad you decided to spend some time with me today. I am very excited now that we are entering the fall season and right now going into spooky season. Getting around to my favorite time of year, start curling up with those books along with a blanket and some hot cocoa and maybe a nice candle or fireplace. What I'm going to do today is show you some spooky options for your reading pleasure this month. Some of them I am going to be reading myself, some I've already read. So I want to share with you what I would recommend for spooky season. So to start out, I got a few books recently from a visit to a thrift store that I got specifically because we're getting around to spooky season. The first one is The Ghost and Mrs. Mear. This is a title I have heard before. I don't know if it was in reference to the book or the movie, but this is a book that has a movie based on it of the same title. I don't know much about it, so I'm going to go ahead and read the back so we can both learn. It says, burdened by debt after her husband's death, Lucy Mear insists on moving into the very cheap Gull Cottage in the quaint seaside village of Whitecliff, despite multiple warnings that the house is haunted. Upon discovering the rumors to be true, the young widow ends up forming a special companionship with the ghost of handsome former sea captain Daniel Gregg. As she struggles to support her children, seeks out romance in the wrong places, and works to publish the captain's story as a book, Blood and Swash, Lucy finds her secret relationship with Captain Gregg a comfort and blossoming love she never could have predicted. Originally published in 1945, made into a movie in 1947, and later adapted into a television sitcom in 1968. This romantic tale explores how love can develop without boundaries, both in this life and beyond. So, sounds like a very enjoyable book, kind of on the cozy side of spooky. So not really a lot of horror, more of a cozy spooky than actually scary. So that's the first one. The second one that I found in my haul is from Neil Gaiman. It is The Graveyard Book. Another one I really didn't know anything about, so I will read the back cover. Nobody Owens, known as Bod, is a normal boy. He would be completely normal if he didn't live in a graveyard, being raised by ghosts, with a guardian who belongs to neither the world of the living nor the dead. There are adventures in the graveyard for a boy, an ancient indigo man, a gateway to the abandoned city of ghouls, the strange and terrible Sleer. But if Bod leaves the graveyard, he will be in danger from the man Jack, who has already killed Bod's family. So, a little bit higher on the spooky scale. But it is, I believe, a young adult read. Doesn't say specifically, but I believe Neil Gaiman does kind of cater toward young adult, but there's nothing wrong with reading young adult books as an adult. They are definitely still fun. This one does include graphics along in the story, so definitely making it a little bit adding to your reading pleasure. So, looking forward to this one. I think this one is going to be a definite for me this month because it's fairly new to me. But that's on top of all the other books I've already decided I want to read by the end of the year. So, we'll see. All right, next one. This one goes back to my childhood, or rather, maybe early teenage years. I was a big fan, still am, big fan of the author Christopher Pike. He did young adult horror, sci-fi, a lot of sci-fi crossover. But this book is called The Midnight Club. This has actually seen a bit of a resurgence recently. As you can see, it is now a show on Netflix. I have watched a couple episodes of the show. I have not finished it, but so far it does stay fairly true to the book itself. The story is very fascinating. I really enjoy it. It is kind of a spooky, but also has vibes of like reincarnation. So I will read the back for you. Rotherham Home was a hospice for young people, a place where teenagers with terminal illnesses went to die. Nobody who checked in ever checked out. It was a place of pain and sorrow, but also, remarkably, a place of humor and adventure. Every night at 12, a group of young guys and girls at the hospice came together to tell stories. They called themselves the Midnight Club, and their stories could be true or false, inspiring or depressing, or somewhere in between. One night, in the middle of a particularly scary story, the teenagers make a secret pact with each other. The first one who dies will do whatever he or she can do to contact us from beyond the grave, to give us proof that there is life after death. Then, one of them does die. So, love the story, for me it's nostalgia because it takes me back to reading all of Christopher Pike's book as a teenager. I do have a long-term goal of recollecting all of Christopher Pike's books. So I've made an initial search. They're not really found on Amazon for a reasonable price at the moment. And I don't typically find them in any used bookstores or any of the thrift stores I've gone to. So I think this is going to be a bit of a challenge to gather at least all of the books that I want to recapture. But definitely recommend any Christopher Pike book. I will recommend. So that's that one. All right, so now we are going to go down a very interesting path to finish out the recommendations. These three books will have a commonality, and I'll kind of explain as I go along. So the next one is called Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu. And this is actually a series. I think there's 4 in the series. They all start with Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu, but it's The Adventure of the Deadly Dimensions. And this one says, The Shape of Ancient Evil. A series of grisly murders rocks London. At each location, only a jumble of bones remains of the deceased, along with a bizarre sphere covered in strange symbols. The son of the latest victim seeks the help of Sherlock Holmes and his former partner, Dr. John Watson. They discover the common thread tying together the murders, bizarre geometries based on ancient schematics, enable otherworldly creatures to enter our dimension, seeking to wreak havoc and destruction. The persons responsible are gaining so much power that even Holmes's greatest enemy fears them, to the point that he seeks an unholy alliance. So I am very excited to read this. The whole Cthulhu set of myths is something that fascinates me, and that's what we're going to kind of delve into with the next couple of books. But this was brand new to me. This is another one I discovered at the bookstore or thrift store like a week or two ago. So looking forward to this one. And if I enjoy the first one, then there are several more to explore. So following the Cthulhu mythos, my first introduction... Actually, I don't know if it was my first introduction. I think I knew about Cthulhu before, but was drawn to this author because he's like a modern writer writing about the Cthulhu mythos that was actually originally written back in early 1900s. And this is the Titus Crow series by Brian Lumley. He's actually the author of Necroscope, which I have discussed in a previous video. But this series, it's a trilogy altogether. So this is actually, this trilogy is considered an omnibus. Each book has 2 stories in it. They were originally stories published separately. This includes the story The Burrowers Beneath and The Transition of Titus Crow. And then the rest of the trilogy, each one has 2 additional stories, kind of proceeds through the life of Titus Crow. Titus Crow encounters Cthulhu-type beings in his adventures, and he works to rid the world of them. These are long-standing horrific creatures that are as old as time itself, and these creatures, the Cthulhu creatures, are looking to bring back their dominance of the world. It's those efforts of returning to world domination that Titus Crow is trying to thwart. All right, so the whole Cthulhu mythos, I said that this is something that fascinated me. I first discovered this from the original creator of the mythos, to my understanding. This was created by H.P. Lovecraft. So H.P. Lovecraft is a author that I also discovered when I was in the teenage years. Absolutely love. He created this Cthulhu mythos that's become a very big part of horror culture. It has influence in a lot of the horror genre and different media. But H.P. Lovecraft originated these stories, and what I really like about these, specifically Lovecraft's writing, is the way he writes is he leaves a lot to the imagination. So it's kind of psychological horror in a sense. Beyond that, the supernatural figures very large in these stories, and the supernatural that Lovecraft describes is not just your simple like vampires or witches, but these are what are considered ancient evils. So these are things that have been alive for millennia. If you have done any played any fantasy games, fantasy horror games, you've probably come across like Eye of the Beholder or Cthulhu type creatures in those. Like World of Warcraft especially has what they call the old gods, that is very reminiscent of Cthulhu and that whole history. So this one is on the top of my list to read this month. I want to go back and reread all of the stories that got me into H.P. Lovecraft, and to just bring back my whole appreciation for the Cthulhu mythos. I will read this before I go to the Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu. That way I'm kind of brought back up to speed on all the nuance of Cthulhu. So those are the books on my agenda for October. I don't know if I will get to all of them, but I will certainly give it a good college try. And at the end of the month, I will do a wrap up. Maybe I'll do a October 31st special edition to talk about what my thoughts are on the books, and maybe even go into a little bit more depth with the influence of Cthulhu into modern culture, because there are a lot of movies that have been influenced by this author, and I will actually highlight some of those movies because some of them I've enjoyed as well. So I hope you all have a good spooky season. I hope you find a lot of spooky things to read. If not, then I wish you many cozy reading moments throughout the month as well. If you like the content today, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Love to hear your thoughts. Are these any authors that you have heard of before? Any that you have read? Any that you plan to read based on what you've learned about them? And then I'd love a like if you like the content today, and I would really love your patronage if you would subscribe for future videos. And if you know of any readers who you think might also appreciate topics like this, I would love if you would share so that we can continue to grow this bookish community. Until next week, happy reading.